start the stream right now. I'll pop into this window here and see what's going on, but there should be a broadcast occurring. I don't know if anyone will be there. A, because it's summer, B, because it's us, and C, because it's early. But there should be mute that. A broadcast.
Well, we're listening to you.
Yeah. Okay, that's that muted.
Courtesy of feedback.
Right here on RGR. Oh, I've got to fucking sign in.
Views and listener views.
What's my email address on here?
For a small donation, you'll be able to receive our free Retro Gaming Roundup tote bag, which you can take to your favorite expo and just shovel shit into and walk out the door like you purchased it.
Oh, is this going to tell me it doesn't recognize this computer and make me do funky stuff? Let's hope not. Let's try it.
So coming up shortly on the program, we'll be bringing you news about the deaf CD thief. He has been spotted in the wild once again, up to shenanigans.
Well, there's a stream. Do I get the chat room? Yay! I get the chat room as well. All right. So that one's working. Well, hello, everybody. This is live news for June 2018. We're halfway through the year. And it's flying by. And it's summer. It's summer in the UK. We've got highs of high 20s today. And it's going to get even hotter next week. We may even touch the big 30 next week, which will be great for my birthday. We're having a bit of a barbecue for my birthday. So that'll be lovely.
It's still going to rain.
Probably. But we do have cover outdoors, so that's all right. We've got contingency plans. As people in the UK do. That's a nice little
fireplace bit you put together there.
Oh, yeah, it was cool. Yeah, so last night we gave everything a test run. Fired up the barbecue, used the pagoda outside, and all the furniture was already built, but we gave the fireplace a dry run, burned some old trees that we'd chopped down. Had a nice cozy evening. Stayed out till it was dark.
Scared the shit out of the new trees.
Yeah, yeah. You better watch your ass.
Did you see what they did to Tim? Holy shit! These people ain't fucking around.
So yeah, next Sunday we're going to have a BBQ, which will all be good. So what have we been up to this month? I did make a couple of little notes on one of the websites I've used to pick up arcade machines over here, Jammer Plus. There's been some shenanigans there. The forum has closed. And,
really?
Yeah, the guy was talking about maybe keeping it open long enough for someone to get the data from it and, you know, move it over to UK VAC, which is another popular arcade forum over here. But that didn't happen. They were talking about doing it read-only, you know, migrating everything over, but I think he just got sick of it and turned it off.
Requires an emergency ejection of a fucking forum.
I think he just got sick of it, but didn't really give anyone too much notice because, yeah, there's a lot of crap on there, like every other forum, but there was a lot of useful technical stuff that people have used to fix machines over the years.
Oh, God, I've used that site as a reference. It was very, very popular for a long time.
Yeah, it was, but it's sadly gone. But a lot of the members have gone over to UK VAC. So the arcade forum scene in the UK is still pretty healthy. UK VAC's a very lively forum. I tend to use the new posts link when I go to it, so you just see everything that's changed since your last visit, and that's always at least a page, sometimes 2 or 3 if you leave it a couple of days. So
it's funny that there's a separate, like a UK arcade. I get, like, for example, like Germany or Finland, where the language is completely different. Mm-hmm. But, you know, amongst English-speaking countries, it's curious that there's like a separate one for like US, Canada, USA. I mean, I get the regionalization stuff for finding games, but for discussing the function and all, to me, it's completely absurd that you go over to one site and, you know, there's a discussion, you go over to the others, but you put two together, there would have been some progress, you know?
Yeah, I get that, but then if you imagine maybe some of the busy American forums and some of the busy UK forums all combined, you would just get pretty much a wall of noise every time you visited. How do you sort the wheat from the chaff kind of thing? So I could see that, but all is not lost. UK VAC's a pretty healthy place, so.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Well, their machines don't take quarters, Scott.
Some of them do. We do. On there, every so often, there'll be like a thread that says container raid, and someone will bring over a load of machines, and so they'll open it up to others. Someone might want to bring 15 over, and there'll be a whole lot of space left in that container, so people will chime in. Well, I've got 2 to come over, and they'll share the cost of the shipping and all of that and organize it all there.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of that going on here in the 90s, where a lot of the games that were sold, shipped over to Europe, especially Eastern Europe, a lot of the pinballs that were shipped over there that sort of run their course, and that were now out of the marketplace, people were re-importing those. I mean, remember at one point, the container runs were getting so ridiculous. Like, if you remember Clay Harrell's site, the pin repair, he had these huge databases of how to repair pinballs. Then got mad one day, put them behind a paywall, and then they just disappeared. Whatever that was about. But he used to head up a lot of these big container deals. And, games like Bonsai Run that were going for, $2,000, $3,000 were suddenly come back in containers for $500 to $600. It was a mental time, but long gone are those days.
Yeah, so we'd bring machines over, and when I was in Machu Picchu, I was talking to a guy there. He actually brings British cars back, and a lot of people have started doing that. A lot of the E-types and stuff that we sent over, 60s, 70s, a lot of those are coming back. And I saw today, what was it I saw today? Well, I'll get onto a lot of it in a second, but just driving through the street, a left-hand drive Jag XJS, which someone had brought back. So, yes, just keeping on arcade machines for a sec, I did see a couple come up for sale that you just hardly ever see over here. One was Ice Cold Beer, and one was Lucky and Wild, which, even though it's rare...
Both favorites of the show.
Yes, they are, but even though Lucky and Wild is quite rare, it doesn't seem that desirable. I mean, it's a big machine, but they're talking like, £300-400 for it, for a big 2-player cab, so surprised me with the price on that. But yes, today I went to a historic transport show in Lim, which is not too far from me. And there was all the usual suspects, lots of, old steam engines, traction engines, that kind of thing. And loads of historic cars, both US. They had a whole US section. I had a really good-looking 67 soft-top Mustang that I've got some pictures of. I can throw some of these pictures up at some point. But, some great American cars, some great classic British stuff. There was a Triumph Stag Collectors area there. There was loads of Triumph Stags there. And we had a Spitfire flyover at 12:39 exactly. It came over once, did a bit of a loop, came back. Did a total of 3 flyovers over the field. So I got some video of that. Always great just to hear that.
Isn't that just a fantastic sound, man?
It's amazing. And Paula was asking me, we were talking about it as we were walking through the show. She's saying, why do people feel like that about the Spitfire? And I couldn't put my finger on any one thing because, yes, it helped to win the war. Yes, it was pretty much all British. It was flown by Brits to protect Brits. So I get that, but we weren't around then. So, why do...
because
our
you're
generation
around today because of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, nostalgia, you can't really explain nostalgia, can you? It's a pretty tricky thing to try and do.
And there's the man factor, right? Mm-hmm. When you hear that piece of machinery, because you got to remember, okay, piston engine planes, for the most part, became obsolete in stages after World War II. First, they became obsolete for fighters. Then they became obsolete for bombers. Then they became obsolete for airliners. And by the, early 60s, they were gone in terms of, predominant usage. Mm-hmm. But with fighters, piston engine fighters were obsolete within 6 months of the end of the war. Both the Germans and the Americans had operational jet fighter units in World War II. And not a lot of people know this, but we did. I mean, we had the P-80 derivative. The Germans, they had several. They had the Arado. That was a bomber in observation. They had this 262, which was an incredible machine. The Heinkel 162. So there were jet fighters in World War II. And, within 6 months of the end of the war, they were shoving all the piston engine stuff into the trash heap and, because jets were here and it was dominant technology. But what's really interesting, though, is that makes, quite honestly, piston engines for aviation use, that was the height of the technology. So you're looking at the best of the best. When you look at a Mustang or a Spitfire or a Corsair or a Bearcat, those are the best, the pinnacle of that technology. So, from the man point of view of watching this ultimate machine in its category, just the fury and the way that, V12 just pounds into your chest when it goes over.
Yeah.
That's what I think many women just aren't going to get. Because, when they see like a dragster go down the drag strip, they're like, why is it so stupid loud? Why don't and we're like, more! So, it's a man element,
And that sound is unmistakable as it flies over. Because I've seen them a few times, and Lancasters, things like that. I've seen flyovers of them before, and it is just an amazing sound. Unmistakable, really, and just great.
Yeah, it was fascinating, too, about those aircraft and, the impact they have. If you look at, when I was a kid, when we were kids, in that late 70s, early 80s, going to air shows and all, these planes were still more plentiful and parts were more plentiful. So, like, pretty much after World War II, there wasn't a lot of use for these, big V12 high horsepower engines. You couldn't put one in a car. The airplanes were, considered militarily obsolete. So a bunch of these engines made their way out into the racing world, mainly like hydroplanes and all that. So, the boats that were racing like in the 50s and early 60s, they were all using World War II aircraft engines. By, the mid 60s, they were obsolete because, better power plants were available. And so throughout the 60s and 70s, people were, plucking up these engines for parts. They'd go and, buy a V12 that had been pulled out of a racing boat, and so the parts were plentiful. So people would push these things hard, the gaskets, the connectors, the fittings, all that stuff was literally still stacked up in crates from the end of World War II. Because it hadn't been that long, like 65, that was, 20 years after the end of World War II. So, like when we went to air shows, they would bring these things in at, full, what's called military power, full power, and just come screaming down the runway and pull up, and they just run the piss out of them. Now those parts are so rare and expensive that if you ever notice, they pretty much baby them. So if you go to an air show today, they just kind of basically take off, partial power, kind of idle around. They don't hammer it that hard. What you're hearing is not the full bore, application of those aircraft. But, just thinking back to the days when I was a kid going to air shows and just how off the hook that stuff was is just incredible. But still a very worthy sight to see today.
Yeah, definitely. So that's about me. Although I did one final thing at the end of last show. I threw out a little comment in the outro just to see if anyone listens all the way to the end through that bit. And I got a few messages back that people do. And that kind of reminded me of a few listeners who we used to have were a big part of the show. We've met them at expos, etc. And haven't seen them around for a while. Maybe they still listen, maybe they don't. One of those is Mark Bowling. I've exchanged a few emails with him over the years. Petros Milakos, who is Greek, and I've seen him at a few UK shows, but I've not seen him at one for a while. Are you still listening? Are you still going to shows? Are you coming to any more? And Texas BBS as well. Exchanged a few messages with him, and he was posting in our forums, a few years ago, and haven't seen him since. So if you're still out there, let us know. And that's about me for this month.
Well, I've been doing a butt ton of gaming. As listeners know, I the thing that I asked for finally came about, that there was a modern console I could walk in and find a bunch of games and play through. And I wasn't just pissing and moaning about that over all the decades almost. There just wasn't, once they went to Double Thumb Gaming, and it lost me, But they figured out the formula, and I must give them mad props for that, because I was serious. I really did want to buy another console and go play games, right? So I've been I'm about a dozen games through the PS4 now, and the one I just beat was Mass Effect Andromeda, and it's a fantastic story. You know, the humans figure out how to cross dark space and go to the another galaxy within the universe. So they do like a 400-year journey. You know, everyone's in cryosleep. They cross this 400-year gap and show up in this new galaxy, and there are species living there, some very hostile, some that we make alliances with, and you're the what's called a pathfinder. So you're basically trying to find viable worlds to settle and build out human settlements in that galaxy. And all in all, it was a wonderful game. I played the Mass Effect 3 on the PS3, and I quite liked it. It was one of the few modern games at that point that I really liked. I think it was that and Dot Game Heroes. But anyway, so I beat Mass Effect, and the only complaint I really have about the game, I like the engine, I like the combat, I like the aliens, and because I can't be bothered with a lot of the little elements that they put in there. Some of the inventory systems are just absurd. So I don't want to sit there and do button mashers or press, A square B to change from one weapon to another in comp. No, fuck that. I just want to kill the bad guy. So the way I spec'd out the character was just the maximum, health and armor survivability, and then gave them a sniper rifle. So I just, we'd pull up and the two assistants run out and start, exchanging small arms fire. And I just sit there, the sniper, kaboom, 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 and just vaporize these fuckers. It was a lot of fun. So the one thing is, there was what seemed like one of the main missions was to go and find this, Nexus thing, station, place, whatever. And so I was doing that. Then I thought, I should really build up some of my other, capabilities first. So I went and settled a few planets. Then, I got my weapons up and all. I said, okay, let me roll back over and check out that other quest. And all of a sudden, here I am beating the game. And it was just done in no time. I mean, it was probably a good 20, 30 minutes of going through the sequencing. But still, I was I literally beat the game. I'm like, well, shit, it's done. That came out of nowhere. So the ending was a little weak, I thought, And then it, of course, gives you now that, the galaxy saved, you're free to explore and do other quests. I'm like, nah, I beat the game I'm on. So I finished that up, and then I started on Witcher 3, which has been recommended to me by people on and off the show.
Me.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, quite a few people have recommended it to me. You have, certainly. Some guys at work, some guys I know, they're like, dude, Witcher 3, man, try it. And, I did get through Skyrim, and so I started on Witcher 3, and, I got the Griffin mission done. I showed up at this Baron's place. Now I'm looking for his family. So I'm still just scratching the surface on the game. So far, so good. Story-wise, excellent. Characters, good. Graphics, great. The only thing that's a little annoying is the navigation system. At some points, it seems to show you the path you need to travel. Other points, it seems to flip over and show you where you've been. So you're never quite sure what you're looking at. And also, the same complaint I had about Skyrim and a couple other games is that it's so damn dark. I mean, many games, they use that darkness to cheat. And, when they can't render the graphics, in full color, bright and crisp and all, they'll just make it dark as fuck and hide the fact that they couldn't do the graphics. I get that, but, that trick gets old when you're you go into a room, right? And it's dark as shit, and you're looking around, and sometimes you can't even find your way around the room. There were certain phases of Zelda that were like that,
I just want to say this real quick. A lot of those newer games where when you start off and they tell you to adjust your brightness settings, and they'll put some kind of emblem on the screen. They're like, brighten it just so you can barely see this emblem.
Yeah.
Always go higher than what they recommend.
Oh, hell yeah.
Always.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime I do that, I feel like kind of what you're saying, I'm fumbling around, I can't see shit. I always boost it up a lot more, and I never seem to have a problem. So maybe you need to adjust your brightness settings.
Been there, done that. But it's not all games. Don't get me wrong, but there's 3 games I can think of where it was just silly dark. One was Zelda. The other one was bits of Zelda. The whatever the hell the newest one was. Skyrim and this one, freaking Witcher 3. And there are bits where they hide the graphic defects or shortcomings, they make the areas dark, and it's annoying as shit. Maybe just a simple wood floor and make it visible so you can find your way around the room. The one thing that I did though in which game was it? The character had magic abilities. I can't remember which game it was. I beat like a dozen in the last 4 months, but you're pretty much running around, and the character could actually cast a light spell. So I did that like every 10 seconds. Boop, light the place up. Boop, light the place up. I spent like all the magic abilities just lighting the scenery up so you could see. Yeah, that was Skyrim. Yeah, I think that trick is sometimes overused, but that's the one complaint I've really got about Witcher 3 is places are just annoyingly dark. And a lot of those games, the action seems to take place mainly at night. Even though it's like a day-night cycle, it sure shit seems to be dark a lot more than it is light.
Well, they do have the mechanic in that game. You can take a potion, I think it's called cat eyes or something like that, so you can see better in caves and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm still stupid early in the game, so I'll get to that.
Probably one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, I'm definitely going to play it through. I'm enjoying it. It was fun to beat Mass Effect, and now move on to Witcher 3. So after that, I've got a couple more lined up. So I've got quite the PS4 collection. I'm pleased to say that the gaming industry has got back with us non-double thumb gamers. So a couple of that's sort of the modern gaming stuff I've been doing. One thing I want to tag on to Mike's comments, we were talking about old engines. I just want to throw this out there because I know we've got listeners with a lot of different tastes and hobbies. I picked up the coolest engine ever and have been messing around with it, sort of optimizing it and all that. So there was a type of engine made in the late 1800s, early 1900s called a hit-and-miss engine. And it's called that because it has a mechanical governor. Because, they were still in the transition from steam to gasoline power, from external combustion to internal combustion engines. And they were still using a lot of the methods they used on steam engines. So it's a mechanically governed engine. So there's basically a governor, like 2 weights, that spin out when the flywheel increases in speed. And that pulls a trip into place that holds the exhaust valve open. So that basically lets the piston go back and forth, just pushing air in and out the exhaust valve with no drag. So it lets the engine decelerate. So when the engine's idling, you'll hear like a pop, pop, as it rotates, probably 20 revolutions for every one pop, So it pops like every 2 or 3 seconds and then just keeps spinning. Now, when you put a load on them, they sound more like a modern, Briggs & Stratton 4-stroke engine. But the real ones are huge, heavy beasts, and you might spend $1,000 to $1,500 for a good running one, which is a pretty good deal. But the models of them, like when you get into like quarter scale, fifth scale models, a completed running model will set you back around $3,500 just for like a desktop, model. And, I machined one using a casting kit, which is basically they make the molds of the raw parts and you do all the machine work. Took me months to finish, That's why they're so expensive, is because of the time invested. So anyway, I always looked at these and said, man, if somebody just drew this up in, CAD and then, made them CNC parts, they could belt out all the parts for one of these for like $100 of material and sell them for like $300. But, I don't have the time to do it. And, but fortunately somebody did. So I picked one of these things up. It was $280 off of a website called Bang Good. That is not a porn site. It's actually kind of like AliExpress. And it took like 5 months for it to get delivered. I had some doubts, but it did get delivered. And it is a beautiful literally, under $300 for a fully functioning hit and miss model engine is just freaking great. So, if any of our listeners out there are, retro engine fans too, and want to pick up a beautifully functional modern interpretation of a hit and miss engine, check out Banggood. Hit and miss engine. It's the only one on there. It's like blue anodized, all that. Fantastic buy. Just wonderful piece of little hardware if you're into gadgetry like that, as I know many of our listeners are.
So why so long for delivery? Is it cast to order or something?
Well, so I think what they kind of did was a pre-order, and then they made them and then shipped them out, and it took longer than they planned. But to their credit, they did deliver it. It just, like in February, they said, oh, yeah, it should ship March 8th. And it did not, And you'd ask them, hey, what the fuck's up with this, right? And they wouldn't even reply, And, I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'm just going to ride it out, see what happens, I can always contact the credit card and get a refund, whatever. But, I don't want to cancel the order, which, I even emailed Banggood, and they were like, please to be back in stock soon. If wish to cancel order, click here. I'm like, so I'm, replying in, English, no, motherfucker. What I was asking is you go ask the cocksucker that's making these when the fuck he's going to ship them. And they just sent the same cut and paste reply, So, anyway, it was worth the wait. And it's a fantastic little toy.
All right. Well, I've been playing some of the Sega classics on the PS4 just because it's a little bit easier, and quite honestly, I like the DualShock 2 controllers. Kind of been going through that library of games. I think there's 50 games on that collection. It's pretty nice. So playing through a lot of classic Genesis games with my 6-year-old. Had a pretty busy month myself. Going to be finishing up grad school here in 1 week. So can't wait for that shit. Been a long road. I think my brain is fried at this point. But
so you're going to prom?
Yeah, I will be. Can't wait. But I had a busy month. I went to Heroes Convention on Father's Day weekend. It's a big comic book convention on the East Coast. Got to see, for those of you that are fans of the comic books, got to see Mark Bagley. He was he won one of the early contests for Do You Want to Work for Marvel? He was the winner of that original contest. Drew a lot of Spider-Man in the 90s. Really great guy, great comic book artist. Got him to sign a couple old books that I had that I bought in 1992 or something. So that was cool. Just it's always fun to see some of the cosplay folks there. I had a couple nice collectibles that I took to get graded by the CGC. I have a massive amount of comic books, and I want to kind of pare them down to my best stuff. I mean, I have, I don't know, somewhere around 40 long boxes full of comics at this point. Most of them I inherited, so I'm trying to pare that down to a smaller collection and get some of the better ones graded. So one of the ones I took to get graded was Werewolf by Night 32. For comic book fans, you'll know that's the first appearance of Moon Knight. So a pretty cool book. Took a first appearance of Blade, a couple other things. I don't really collect comics now, but there was one artist that I walked by that he had this massive poster of Venom, and it just looks so badass. When you walk by something, you're just like, man, it really caught my attention. I'm like, man, this guy's really fucking good. So I stopped at his booth. His name's Clayton Cray. You guys probably know Clayton Crane that are modern day comic book fans. Really nice guy. Picked up a couple of his books, got him to sign it and everything. And then since I had a CGC guy there, I just went ahead and paid the $20 to have them authenticated and sent off for grading. So I have that sort of as my memorable collection from the show. Also went out to Portland. Was in Portland this week. I got to stop by Ground Control. Clay Cowgill was not in the building when I was there. I was hoping to speak with him, but I got to check out the arcade. Really nice arcade. I mean, I had never been out to Portland before, and certainly never been to Ground Control. If you guys are out in the Portland area, I highly recommend it. Have a little
fabulous place. Great decorations too.
Yeah, I mean, even like the stairs, you know, to the second level, it's kind of cool how they have a lot of predominantly pinball upstairs.
All the light pipes running up the wall. It's just so well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just like a really cool vibe, you know. I think maybe it was like an older bar building. They had a new entrance there. It said like, please use our new entrance. So I don't know.
That's what she said.
What the story is behind that. But yeah, I played a lot of the classics. Played Lucky and Wild. Played some Asteroids. Played a lot of Metallica. I was playing the new Kiss. And get that, Scott, you have one of the new Kiss, don't you?
I do, and I love it.
It was so friggin' weird. I got like a score, I don't know, whatever it was, like 18 million or something. I got enough to get a free play. So I got a free play, and then when I lost, my score ended in 40. And then like the demon face comes out at the end, you know, if you match the numbers, you get a free.
Yeah.
I got 3 free plays in a row, plus my free play for the high score. So I played 5 games on 1 quarter. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I got to the point where I'm like, man, if I get another one, I'm just going to walk away. This is like too strange. They just kept, and like 2 of the games in a row ended in 40, and it hit 40 twice. So I don't know what the odds or the algorithm is, but it just seemed like highly unusual that happened to me. One of the games that I got to check out that was there is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade New York Streets, which is a 4-player side-scrolling beat 'em up. Have you guys seen that yet?
No.
Yeah, not in person.
I want to say it's like a Raw Thrills game. You know, like love them or hate them. Hey, they're still putting stuff out there. It's actually pretty fun. I played as Michelangelo. It has more of like a cel-shaded style to it. Very similar to like, you know, the kind of the original Turtles arcade game. You can get turtle power, and your guy kind of flips out. You could pick up pizza and things like that. Pick up grenades, shurikens. I don't know. I think it was like 75 cents to play. I think I played two plays on it, and I was maybe at the second stage or something like that. I beat is it Bebop? Whichever one the Warthog is, I beat him. It was pretty fun. It would have been more fun if there was more people playing. I got there kind of early in the evening. It was maybe 7:38. You know, and I was only there for maybe an hour and a half. So
it looks like a very modern interpretation of the original, you know, Ninja Turtles arcade game.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, hey, I wish there was more people there playing that would have played with me. I probably would have went through the whole game, but you know, I was just kind of trying everything out a little bit. All the machines seem to be in nice working order. So again, Ground Control, highly recommend it. Nice arcade. I wouldn't recommend wandering too far away from there. No. I was just kind of in Portland, like, hey, I'm checking it out. And honestly, I was kind of astonished at the amount of, like, I guess I would just call them, like, white junkie zombies all over Portland.
That's Portland.
Yeah.
Man, there was guys, like, just shooting up. And, like, it was usually they'd be in packs of, like, 4 or more. And they were just kind of, like, young 20-something-year-old dudes, like, tatted up.
Well, they hunt more efficiently against their prey, known as the taxpayer.
I mean, look, I look like I could drown, like I drowned kittens or something. I'm not like an easy looking target. And I was walking, these guys were crossing the street, coming up asking for money, and you know, like, yo, bro, did you hear me? I said I want, give me some money, and I was like, did I fucking say anything to you? Get the fuck out of here, you know? Like you got to be aggressive right back with those guys, but. Man, just like all over.
I tell you cave one nose in, and the rest of them calm down real quick.
Yeah, I was just kind of shocked, but Portland was cool. Had a good time out there. I was at a business conference. Got to meet with the guys that did the Epic Meat Snacks and also Chameleon Coffee, which was one of the first cold brew coffees that got, I think the first that got national distribution. Those guys ended up selling out to Nestle and made a lot of fucking money. So that was inspiring. Just, always cool talking to some entrepreneur type guys. I guess they were friends with the Deep Eddy vodka guys and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun. Modern gaming, still playing a little bit of Friday the 13th. Didn't get too much in this month, but I was able to get to my level 113. So now I can change up all of my weapons. It's sad. The writer from Friday, the original Friday the 13th, there's been an ongoing lawsuit between the original writer and I can't even remember the guy's name. All you have to know is he's a douchebag. Because Jason wasn't even in the first movie. The mother was. Spoiler for those of you who don't know.
Spoiler for a 1978 movie.
1977.
Yeah. So the guy the screenwriter from the first one is claiming rights on the rest of the Friday the 13th franchise, and now the guys that did the game can no longer release like DLC content. So they had planned to release Jason X and the Grendel, which is the spaceship from Jason X, and some other DLC packs. But because of the lawsuit that's been pending forever, now they got shut down. They're supposed to be in sort of reboot of the Friday the 13th movie. That's kind of on hold indefinitely until somebody runs this cocksucker over with like a big rig or they settle out of court. I don't know what's going to happen, but kind of disappointed. So there you go.
Either one, they can either settle in court or settle out of court with the big rig. I'm good either way. Hey, so we got obviously a topic that we want to do a quick round the table on, which is the Atari Box, since that seems to be marching forward inexorably towards funding. But real quick, there's a little update for us here. I was sent some pictures and a page of text. Let's just use the initials here. We'll call the fellow JD. He says, "The CD thief strikes again." And it's a picture of him standing there holding a Photoshop copy of CG Adventures. And let's see here. I'm trying to find the text. It says... this guy got kicked out of a thing. Here's a description. I know I've seen him pretty much at all the shows and swap meets. Reply to that is, yeah, I heard about this. R and J were talking to S about this at the show. What a shit. He's shitty. The guy replies, who was this? Some douchebag named Conrad. Apparently he went to Classics and Oddities afterwards. And then they post a picture of him. Yes, that's the dude. Some of you may know this already, but I thought it would be wise to make sure. Today at the Cowlitz show, someone took it upon themselves to reformat the game drive of Sal's Amiga in the free play area. Thankfully, they figured out who it was. Turns out he was rude and caused issues in the past. He was asked to leave. I don't have a name or photo, but I can definitely give you a description. And I know I've seen him at pretty much all the shows and swap meets. So I'm sorry, that was kind of in reverse order because the screenshots were sent to me in reverse order, and I didn't turn them around the right way. My bad. Anyway, so yeah, Cowlitz Gamers, this Conrad went in there, formatted a guy's hard drive, apparently picked up and dropped some running hardware like he tends. I've seen him do that in person. Mm-hmm. He'll pick up like a 1541 drive that's reading a disc and just drop it from 6 inches, And everybody was too, timid to say, hey, get the fuck out of here until now. So people are finally catching on to the shenanigans of the deaf CD thief. I thought that was a fantastic little update.
I mean, in his defense, it probably has to be extremely frustrating to go through life with a handicap like that.
No, I'm not going to take that defense.
Being deaf doesn't preclude you from dropping people's shit and formatting hard drives.
Yeah, it's like, I know there's a band up there playing, but I can't hear the music, so I'm going to format their hard drive. What? I know there are a lot of people out there that are deaf, blind, have one leg or no legs, whatever, that don't feel the need to be pretty much the biggest asshole on the planet, but he does, so.
I'm not saying it's right, but I could kind of get it. I'm in your corner, Conrad. You drop whatever shit you want.
Okay.
Mark wants Conrad to drop it like it's hot.
Yeah.
So, moving into, I guess, our big discussion, the Atari VCS, not to be confused with the Atari VCS that was released by Atari Corp in 1977, but the Atari VCS, it looks like they're cruising forward to funding still. I mean, they set the bar so low that they had to be funded. And here's where they're at. So if you go to their site, the only thing on their site is a 3D render of the console, and it says, click here to pre-order now. Okay? So we click here.
Hold on, real quick. They're at $2.9 million by 11,000 backers as of, the time of this show, with 6 days left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like 3,000% funded or something like that. So if you click on the pre-order now, it takes you to their Indiegogo, courtesans of up-and-coming hardware developers. And it says, yeah, there will be games for this. That's kind of the description. It says by the time the Atari Box launches, there will be games for it. Then they give you like a cloud, a tag cloud of all these different studios that they're in talks with. All this sounds awfully darn familiar. But like the ecosystem, yes, there will be Atari games to play, classic and modern, and you'll be able to stream and watch Netflix and all that. Okay.
Well, they do say that 100 classic Atari games will be preloaded on the system.
Yeah. Through an emulator, no problem there. But when you get down into, because I'm looking for like, what hardware is this? I want to know what, and what software. What is the actual game system, not the hyperbole. So as I came down, I found the chart of the hardware. They get into what CPU, how much memory, how much RAM, the onboard storage, all that stuff, and the GPU. They get into all that. So there's some, if they are to be believed, some concrete hardware specs available for this thing. And there's a couple of strange things here, right? Like second screen support. Okay, what are they going to do with that? And then where's the other one I found that was really odd?
Just real quick, I want to backtrack for a quick second. When you said some of the, they had the cloud of all the logos for confirmed partners. I will just say that nothing against these studios, but they're not like your typical AAA, what most people would think of.
No, they're just a studio with a logo.
There's certainly smaller studios. There's no Activision, there's no EA, there's none of the big companies that you would kind of expect for a AAA console here, or publishers or developers.
Yeah, I mean, for a console that price-wise is competing with the Xbox One, although that doesn't mean the first Xbox, the first one, it means the Xbox 4, but they call it the one. So, and competing with the PS4. And they're competing with that dollar for dollar, but yeah, the studios are all, not.
They're pretty much mobile game developers for the most part.
Yeah, there's small fry developers, The other thing I find very curious, it says it supports voice commands with a 4 front-facing microphone array. So, I mean, that's kind of a thing now. A lot of devices will include microphones and all that. Yeah, I don't really want to sit there and go, Atari, turn on Netflix. No, what I wanted was a console that will play, Atari Classics, which my wristwatch will, but will also play, a new ecosystem of games as if Atari had never gone away. And I'm just not seeing that, man. I just cannot bring myself. And like, okay, the special wood edition's only available in the pre-order. You know what? I might have to miss out on that one, dude. I might. It's only $300. It's just $300. This is not a lot of money we're talking about. Okay, it's not 3,000. It's not 30. It's $300. It's not a huge amount of money. But even then, I just don't have the confidence in this to say, yeah, I'll pre-order this and see how it turns out. I just don't.
No, I won't be buying one anyway. But the whole shenanigans with what went on, I think maybe in the last 2 weeks, it's all maybe 3 weeks, it's all kind of got a bit iffy.
Yeah, cover that. Get into some of that, because that's some funny shit.
Yeah, so they were showing videos of alleged gameplay footage and saying, check out these games playing on our system. They made that claim. They said it was playing on their system. And there was some other video of like a guy using a controller, but the buttons he was pressing on the controller, and he was literally just hammering like one of the analog joysticks, and that bore no resemblance to the gameplay that was happening on screen. So people started calling them out for that, saying, these are just videos that you're playing while someone holds a controller. And their response was, oh, you're just fake news. And so they started calling out individual YouTubers, and I think I've got a link, one of the news items to a particular video. And
RGT.
Yes. So they came out, called him fake news, saying, you're just after your 15 minutes of fame. This is real, it is playing. And it just quite plainly isn't. So they've just gone off on the complete wrong foot with everybody. And, well, I say everybody. There's thousands of people back this thing not knowing what it is. But for the savvy among us, the ones who followed the Chameleon, the Retro VGS and all of that, we know it's not real, and they are just pulling the same old tricks that we've seen before. Calling out people who are criticizing them. I don't know if they've been deleting posts, but it wouldn't surprise me. But the whole thing just has gone just real sour for me.
Yeah, that's funny, when, and again, just, to rewind a bit to the Chameleon days, when they're there at the New York Toy Fair booth, and just the hubris, and we have official standing. We're at a trade show closed to the public. Look at us. Our booth is being mobbed by interested parties. You haters and trolls cannot touch us. Here's a picture of the console. And from that one picture, fake, fakety fake. It's a SNES and a Jag. Within seconds. No, it's not. It's not. It's a SNES and a Jag. And it was just, the takedown was so self-inflicted, so brutal. And, I mean.
Well, one thing I think is really weird about this is if you go to the Indiegogo page, either, like, the math isn't adding up here. So if you go to their page and you scroll down where it allows you to select a perk, the wood grain console $379, it says 132 claimed. Just the control, like the classic arcade controller, 19 claimed. The sort of Xbox controller, 5 claimed. The two controllers together, 52 claimed. Just the Onyx system, 5 claimed. Just the wood console, 7 claimed. Or if you want
about $100,000 so far.
Or if you want the black, bundle, 45 claimed. But it says that they have over
almost
11,000 backers. 11,000 backers, but according to the math here, that's like, 200. A little over 200, maybe.
All right, so I'm going to do some quick math here. What would you say?
That doesn't make any sense.
All right, so there's going to be little controllers and all that stuff. So let's say all that stuff amounts to 100,000. So we're at $2.8 million. What would you say the average price of the console is? About
$300.
All right. So $2.9 million divided by $300.
It'd be a lot easier if you worked it out on 3 million, which it basically is.
But I'm saying on the page, which shows how many people have backed the various perks, it's showing about a little over 200 people have claimed various perks, but the top number, as far as how many backers have supported it, is over 11,000. So there's a huge disparity. And I don't know, maybe that's something wrong with Indiegogo's display of how many people are backing this thing, but
I was looking to see if there are any.
Doesn't add up whatsoever.
Not at all. No, I was looking to see if there are any little clever tricks, like say, for example, for only $2.6 million, you can meet the designers and have lunch, and that, a anonymous just purchased that perk. But no, there's nothing. Literally. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, doing the math, I don't, it makes no sense. None. And I haven't seen any discussion anywhere out there in the media of, so 11,000 people have raised $2.9 million, but only 180 of them are buying consoles. Based on the numbers, I'm betting that those purchase totals you see are the interest in it, kind of like when the Retro VGS rolled out, that those tiny numbers were the purchases and that was the interest. I'm thinking that 2 million plus that came out of nowhere is literally out of nowhere.
I don't know. I've never backed anything on, like I know on Kickstarter you can add in sort of like a tip if you want. But I've never backed anything. I don't remember backing anything on Indie.
All this, what do you call it?
Shenanigans.
Yeah, unusual representation of order numbers and such. There's a word I'm searching for. Something like Sherlock Holmes would use. What is the word I'm searching for? Irregularities. That's the one. The irregularities in this thing are glaring in that almost $2.8 million is unaccounted for. So we shall see.
We shall, and time will tell on this one. A few people submitted the fake news story. Chris Lethgo was one. Sean Stevenson was one. I thought Random was one, but he posted it in WhatsApp instead.
Yep. I'm seeing them right there.
So what's the predictions on this Atari VCS?
I think they'll come out with something eventually. I have no idea what it will be and how well it will work, because I don't think they've got anything yet.
I think Mike's correct in that they don't have they have a list of hardware they will use if they develop it, and they'll develop it if they get the money. And right now, I am firmly convinced they've probably got about $60,000 in actual purchase commitments, and that is not going to take this thing to market. So I'm going to say I will be very surprised if it comes to market as a physical product.
I mean, I always say I enjoyed the Ouya. I thought it was a fun little system for $100. I thought it was some of the best money you could spend as a video gamer. It was unfortunate that it met its demise so soon, and some of the UI and everything for the menu system, it was a little buggy. The first controllers weren't the best, but I feel like if that Ouya system had come out with Atari branding at the time, man, that thing could have really had some legs. I fried mine by plugging in the wrong power thing for it, so it's unfortunately dead. But yeah, I don't see this doing as well as the Ouya. I mean, that thing was $100 and it was in Target, Best Buy, all over the place. I don't see this thing, unless the margins on it are ridiculous for wholesale. I don't see it getting a lot of retail shelf space, and that will be its death. It It's going to have to be everywhere.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
I mean, and with 11,000 alleged 11,000 backers right now, that's not enough to move the needle. I mean, you'll get some ports of iOS games and some Google Play type store games and things like that, but I don't know.
Well, if you want some way to spend your money on gaming stuff and know that you will receive a gaming machine, museum to sell surplus games. When you have a collection of nearly 1,300 machines, it's almost inevitable you will have a number of duplicates, and the Pacific Pinball Museum is in that position with around 900 titles. That means they have around 400 dupes, all of which they are looking to sell off. Unfortunately, the sale was yesterday. This story landed, I think, 1st of June, 31st of May, even. So there was the auction. I wonder if there's a way we could find out what actually happened. Let me see if there's a link on this page. But no doubt some people picked up some bargains, because these would have been in various states of repair. And so you could have probably picked up a bargain or two. Or 400.
If you need a number of bargains in your life.
Yeah.
Got one here from Peter Gibbs. He says, man emulates SNES on an NES, and gives a link and says if it ran Super Mario All-Stars, that would be kind of emulation 69. So he also says PS CAPTCHA on webpage seems broken, so that may be a thing. So going to his little link here, there is a video, and it just says here, the homebrew scene is always coming out with new ways to emulate games on hardware. Programmer Tom Murphy, otherwise known as Tom7, has been working on a slightly different project in his 2 most recent YouTube videos, figuring out a way to run SNES games on a vanilla NES console. To enact this semi-miraculous feat, video game engineering, Murphy doesn't modify the NES at all. Instead, he hacks the circuit boards of the NES cartridges to outfit them with a Raspberry Pi. All the information from the SNES ROM in the Pi then gets filtered through a program to translate the data into something the NES can understand and render it on screen via the hacked cartridge. So he says here there's some latency issues and a few other things. But yeah, I guess if you pre-run the SNES game and then sample the video down to a lower level and feed it to the Nintendo, then I guess you could do that. So kind of interesting.
Sean Stevenson sends one in to us this month. Thanks, Sean. It's Quake. Narul Mahajahim Hassan, the woman that used to date a oscilloscope, after seeing this is thinking about divorcing her Tetris cart and getting back in bed with the oscilloscope. So
I don't know what
however
the
that dude rolls, I don't need to hear about it.
I don't know what the dude's doing with these objects. Oh dear.
So I would also, let's see, hold on, hop back one real quick. Yes, Spinal had also submitted the SNES on an NES. I'd suggest check out the video. It's kind of a neat thing to do. The guy does some fun video game animations. I just want to credit that before I blew past it. Now we have Peter Gibbs here. This reminds me of Scott's stories of Radio Shack repairs. And I've seen this thing pop up here and there. It says, console repairman explain why cockroaches love PS4s. First, there were snakes on a plane. Then we had sharks and tornadoes. Now there's a darker, more prevalent combination of pests in unlikely places. Cockroaches in your PS4. Yeah, pretty much anything like VCRs, any closed, dark, warm place in a unclean home is going to end up filled with roaches. And yeah, it's funny because I guarantee you, because I saw this when people were bringing in like VCRs that were, roach infested, and they'd point out, so do I get a free repair? And you're like, and you're sitting there with like a 2-foot long wooden thing holding up the lid of the VCR and going, no, it's full of roaches. So you only gonna fix it for me for free? What do I do? Clean your fucking house, you savage. And savage. Yeah, so it's a horrible, nasty thing. I guarantee you, though, there are people working in console repair shops today that people are bringing in their roach-infested consoles and demanding they be fixed with no sense of shame. I mean, you would think, like, if you're going to walk into a game repair shop with this filthy, roach-full, infested thing, you'd think you might say to yourself and go, self, I know I'm a fucking savage. I know the dishes in my sink are 2 weeks old. I know the trash is overflowing, and I have seen cockroaches run across the top of my TV while I'm watching Netflix. But my PS4 stopped working, and I've seen cockroaches running out of that. I'm going to take this into a public place and get loud and huffy when they tell me that it's because it's full of cockroach stuff, and imply it's someone else's problem. And I'll have no sense of shame about this. Let's go. I don't understand that way of thinking.
When my dad passed away a few years ago, we had found, there was a box of like old home movies, me and my sister, our family when we were younger and stuff like that. And he still had a VCR hooked up. And my mom, after the funeral, was like, oh, let's, throw in some old tapes and kind of reminisce, whatever. So I powered up the VCR, and he had left Extreme Amateurs 3 in there. And I was like, she's like, what tape is that? I'm like, oh, I don't know. It was a blank. I didn't have the heart.
And you're like, Extreme Amateurs 3. And she's like, oh, I've only seen Extreme Amateurs 1 and 2.
I didn't know they made a third. But surely they're not amateurs by the time they get to the third. You'd think they'd turn pro by number 3, wouldn't you?
Got one here from Sean Stevenson, Retro Sean, as he is always known. Very cool. Look at that persistence. And it is repair Vectrix in green screen. So somebody used a green monitor here. Let's see. Sentinel Systems. I guess one of the old-fashioned IBM green screens. And, they've got it up and running, so it's outputting into a, that's kind of pretty. You know what? It's a Vectrex running on a bigger monitor. There's been a couple of people that have done this lately, just build an amplifier and drive a bigger screen with it. Take some time and give this a look. It's really trippy. It kind of looks like a cross between Tempest 2000 and a green screen Vectrex. So, very, very much worth your time to go and take a look at this beautiful thing.
Is that Vector?
Yeah.
Huh.
As far as I can tell, sure as shit looks like it.
Mm-hmm. So one that's rumbled on for a few months now and will continue to is the ZX Vega, which was another Indiegogo gaming console. The company that ran it had lots of falling out and are still falling out. And Indiegogo gave them, and that was Retro Computers Limited, by the way. Indiegogo gave them a few conditions they had to meet. You have to send us what you've got, send us a working console. If we believe it's working, then we'll let you finish and send them out to people. And they failed to meet the conditions that Indiegogo set. So Indiegogo have started the process of getting people the money back. Now, some have said they'll wait for a console. Some have said, I want my money back. But they do insist the money is still there, hasn't gone missing, is either there in the bank account in cash form, or they own it in assets, as in completed machines. But again, time will tell, and we'll wait and see. But it's still rumbling on.
Do we know what percentage of people are asking for the money back yet?
Let me see if it says in here. I don't think it says in this. This is a report on the BBC, which will be in the show notes, of course. Doesn't say who's asking for money back. But
it says they identified 120 backers who want their money back.
Right. But Indiegogo don't go through that process themselves. They hand it off to a debt collection agency. Indiegogo, and it will be in the terms and conditions. I don't think they're dodging anything that wasn't there initially. It will be in the T's and C's, but they're saying, you made a deal with this company, you just used our platform to do it, and so you need a debt collection agency to do that for you, and that's what they've done.
There's plenty of games that run over, and I think that's to be expected. You're trying to predict unknown unknowns, as you do in project management. And as long as the project owner is keeping the supporters kind of updated along the way of what's going on, usually people are pretty cool. You'll get that percentage of people that are like, I want my fucking money back, you're a day late. But generally speaking, I think people are generally understanding. Well,
like with that motor, it was worth it to stick through to see if the end product was delivered, and it was. I got lucky, I think. It wasn't any insight on my behalf, just got lucky, but there's a certain element of that.
Yeah, I think the problem with this one was that the people managing RCL just don't like each other anymore, don't speak to each other, and the claims by two of them are that the third one was holding back production, and he was kind of the buck stopped with him, and he wouldn't let anything go out the door because they were pissed at him or something. I don't know what it was, but
I'll say this: who freaking nailed this thing is Sean Stevenson, because I asked him his opinion on it. And he's like, "Don't do it. Don't even think about it. It's gonna be a shit show." I'm like, "Okay,
okay."
So I held off. I didn't jump in, and he told me, he said, if the thing ever happens, you'll pick it up at an expo for 50 quid. I said, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I listened to him.
Yeah.
I back plenty of things on Kickstarter. A lot of them come late. Hey, no problem. One that comes to mind is I backed something called Polygons, the flat 4-in-1 measuring spoon, and it's like a flat magnet that can fold into different shapes to make different size measuring spoons. I don't even know why I ordered it. I think it was like $12.
I do.
Drunken Kickstarter.
Yeah, you know what? If you check it out, it's actually it's a pretty cool kitchen thing.
I was gonna measure shit, and I got high.
I backed this thing. God, I don't even know when I backed it, in like 2016 or something. And it was supposed to be delivered January of 2017, and nothing. They collected over $1 million for this magnetic measuring spoon thing. Over 36,000 backers, and like crickets.
Where'd they find that many suckers at?
Dude, they keep telling people like, oh yeah, we had some problems with the magnets. We're changing facilities somewhere else in China. And it's just like, at this point, I think these guys probably ran off of my $12. No big deal. Not gonna lose sleep over it, but hey, they got $1 million, and for some friggin' folding magnetic spoons.
That's a scam. They keep the dollar amount low enough that no individual person gives a shit.
Yeah, the biggest pledge you could make was $12.
It's long gone at this point. I'm certain if some action was taken against them, like that $1 million is long gone.
Right now, there's somebody sat at a beach bar with a margarita in his hand, talking to the stranger next to him, saying, "So, you ever heard of Kickstarter? I had this scam with these fucked up spoons."
And right next to him is a rather dopey-looking, vapid figure who goes, "Yeah, can I get in on that?" Got one here from Mike James. And he says here, the rarest and most valuable Sega Dreamcast games. Now, the funny thing is I realize it's just my perception, but I tend to think of, cartridges as having some inherent value. And discs, like a disc game, you could burn it, you could reproduce it a million ways. Who gives a crap? How could they ever be collectible? But, I mean, I know that they are. So a couple of here, and many times collectability is based on rarity, not quality of gameplay, as we certainly know with, many video game collectibles. There are some that are great games that are highly sought after for a reason. I'm trying to think of the SNES Earthbound or whatever it is. Yeah. A good game, harder to find, And then there's just crap games, but because, there's only 12 copies known to exist, it's worth $40,000 for the NES, right? So the number one game here is the Speed Devils, the Walmart clean version. So apparently there was a cleaner version of it that was sold only at Walmart, and those go for $600 to $800. Just because a graphic is slightly different. Well, on this one, the flame is blue. I don't care. I just don't. Let's see here. That's a great freaking game. I know people are like, it's an example. It's a great example, and it sticks around for a reason because it was a console generation ahead of what it was running on.
Mm.
Well, Chris Leithgo sent us one. If you don't want to wait for the Atari VCS, you can get the Atari Box made from Hyperkin, which is expecting to ship on July 7th, 2018. This is the new Retron 77, the grooviest console from Hyperkin. Let you play all your classic 2600 cartridges in beautiful, crisp 720p HD. Has some faux wood paneling. Looks pretty cool.
I like the way it looks. I mean, I think they did
a little chunky.
The box and the unit, I think, have a good look to them. Joystick, good look to it. I mean, you know what? I can run on, my little NES here with the Pi in it, or my Amiga up there with the Pi in it. I can run on RetroPie wonderfully emulated HDMI, Atari games. Would I still buy this? Yeah, I might. I mean, I think I kind of want to see it, But if it is Raspberry Pi quality, I know it doesn't make economic sense at all because now you're paying way more than you would for a Pi that runs everything, pretty much up to PlayStation. Yeah, but it's kind of a neat product. And that's why I say a lot of these novelty products, they're just neat.
It's $70.
They work well, yeah, I'd buy one.
$70 system. I suppose if you have a pile of old 2600 cartridges and, you want to keep them, this might be a nice way to play them. Looks like it has onboard save states, which is kind of a nice feature. Micro USB cable adapters, so you can do that. Do you need one of these? I would think Ataris are kind of pretty regularly available.
Yeah.
You can find a 2600 no problem. You can get a RetroPie build easy, and on your RetroPie you can play you can play, you know, all these Atari games with the HDMI out. Is there any need for this thing? No.
I mean, it might be a nice, easy way to hook it up to your HD TV versus, you know, trying to convert the RF converter into HDMI and all that other stuff. So, or component. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you like still playing on cartridges and you have a big collection, this would be good for you.
Speaking of the 2600, I think Chris Lethco sent this one in as well. I've opened up Sean Stevenson's first, and it is Unreal Tournament 2600. It's called UT 2600. It is a demake of the Epic Games Unreal Tournament, specifically for the Atari 2600. There will be a video of it in the show notes, and Sean said similar to the demake of Halo 2600, of course, by Ed Fries.
Yeah, it looks like you could download it for free too.
Yeah, you can download Beta 6. I don't know how many there are, but you can do that.
At least 5 more.
Yeah, yeah.
Got one here from Spiles says C256 Anyone. A new website and forum has sprung up announcing a project to create a spiritual successor to the Commodore 64 and C128. Early specification details include: so they're going to run a 65C816 CPU at 14 megahertz, 4 meg of RAM, okay, custom graphics chip codenamed Vicky, 640 by 480 with 256 colors, dual 6581 and YM3812 sound chips, local DMA and interrupt controller, MIDI in and out, RS-232, Commodore Business Machine serial for your for your floppy drive and all that, SD card, 3.5-inch floppy, and PS2 mouse and keyboard, and a 3D printable enclosure. Now, it looks like they're going to use a FPGA to implement the custom chips. That's great. I mean, because that's a very achievable way to produce actual hardware. Design it and write it to an FPGA and run it. That's nothing there. Sounds odd to me. The only thing is, and Spinal, I'm curious on your thoughts. If you want to maybe reply back to this in the news, and we'll read it next month on the air. I'm interested in your thoughts. This sounds a whole hell of a lot like an Amiga 500, doesn't it?
I think it's probably inspired by the Spectrum Next, and someone's thought, well, let's have a Commodore Next. What would it have been? It could have been this. The difference being, there was actually a Commodore Next. It was the Amiga.
Yeah, I mean, it says that they went to the Toronto Users Group and did a presentation there. And, I mean, that's a legit group. That's a big group, They are... I mean, they're well known, the Toronto group. I'm not... There's nothing about this that makes me suspicious. As in, are these guys out to create a scam, or is it a chameleon thing? And they state here, okay, so far there's been some specs and software discussion on the sites and forums, as far as PCB layout and technical details of the system blocks. The custom chips will be implemented FPGA, but it appears that they intend to use real hardware for the CPU and sound chips. The goal is to design a system that could have been theoretically possible in 87, but keep the feel of the Commodore 64 128. That literally is the Amiga 500. Mm-hmm. It's got comparable horsepower, comparable memory, comparable graphics, comparable sound. It's kind of the Amiga 500. Hey, look, make the thing. I'll probably buy one just because it's cool. I mean, I think they'll sell quite a few of these. It's a good project, but it is pretty much the Amiga 500. Just saying.
Yeah, it is. One here, I think it was from me. Let me just whiz it over to the live feed. And it is a Ben Heck video. So, another one from me, which was Arcade Tales, which was posted maybe in the UK pinball group, I think. And it's an odd one. It's a load of comics. I mean, you can go online and read them on this site, arcadetales.com. And it's comics about things that happen in arcades. So, I'm not sure where the original idea came from. I've just flicked through a couple of them, not read any all the way through. But I then also found, I think that it was posted in the same group, a YouTube video. It's a presentation that some guy does about the social interactions, etc., that happened in the UK arcade scene. And I think that's probably what inspired this. You know, he went on the road with a PowerPoint presentation about UK arcades. And this is maybe a spin-off of it, so worth checking out. Haven't watched the video yet. It is on my watch later list. But you can check out arcadetales.com during the meanwhilest.
You know, it's funny. If you go back to one of our original shows back in the day, we did I think it was a top 10 of like top 10 arcade legend and lore and arcade culture.
Oh, yes.
Something.
I think we did, yeah. What was it?
We went into like all the different cultural traditions, like, you know, lining up your quarters on the rail, you know, where was your turn to play, and, you know, all the just the rumors and it was a great time. It was such a wonderful culture.
Just trying to scroll through, see which one it might have been. There is a past top 10s link on our website. You can flick through and see all the topics we've done. Click on one of them, and it will take you right to the show.
Oh, this is kind of cool. He's just done like sort of an arcade comic book style. This is pretty good work. It's kind of badass.
Badass.
Oh, I like the sketch of Blackpool. I don't think he drew in enough decay, but, you know, maybe it's Blackpool as it was.
It's not Blackpool. There's not enough decay. And Sparklepus sent one in there.
Yeah.
There's
two.
There's still two more from you. What do you got to say?
Well, let's see. Play every retro video game ever made on one incredible system.
Ever?
What do you think?
Ever?
Well, ever. Now, I don't know. I feel like maybe we've covered this. This was covered on Maxim's men's lifestyle magazine. So this is the Poly Mega. I feel like maybe we have talked about this before.
Yeah, I'm just clicking through it now. I'm just trying to see if this is the one with all the...
several months ago. We did talk about it.
Yeah, so it has like a base system and then different modules. So you can buy like the NES module, and it has a cart slot on it and a couple of controller ports for NES controllers. And you can buy the SNES one, and then you slot the SNES one in, and that has a SNES slot and a couple of SNES controllers. And they were talking about doing some of the CD-based systems too, the PS1. I think maybe the PC Engine as well they were going to do. So it's been around for a while, but to be honest, it made a bit of a splash and then kind of went away for a bit. So I'm not sure where they're up to right now.
Yeah. I don't know. They were at E3 this past month, so maybe that's why. Brian Bernal is sort of the creative lead behind it.
That name sounds familiar.
These guys, he worked on a lot of projects. Looks like for Sony, he worked on it.
Well, there's a warning sign. I designed a small PlayStation.
No. He worked at Insomniac Games on
That's
Ratchet
two products
Clank.
I've designed that have not come to market.
And the other fella, Eric Christensen, he worked on, what did he work on? Like the Uncharted series and some other stuff for Sony. He worked at Zynga, Insomniac Games. So it's not like this is just like some guy that's a salesman for a warehouse trying to start a console. These guys have been in the industry. And
with a team of crack experts. Yo, this crack is good. I'm an expert.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, I think it's cool from an aesthetic standpoint. It meets sort of my design requirements. The UI that they show looks pretty good. Good looking box. You know, the module thing seems a little bit kitschy to me. Like that seems like that's more of a gimmick.
Yeah, because bottom line, all it is, it's just going to be a connector interchange. The same function could be fulfilled with just a generic, multi-purpose, handheld controller going right into USB.
Mm-hmm.
Same way Retron 5 reads, multiple cartridges, Yeah, it works, but you could just dump the ROMs on a card and be done with it.
I think it's better looking than the Retron, definitely. But you need to buy extra modules. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's cool. Like, hey, if you just want to collect Genesis and TurboGrafx, then you kind of have this one thing, and you could save some space, and you don't need to have additional console. I don't know. I mean,
it's funny whenever we talk about these new consoles, be they new directions like the VGS Chameleon, or be they all-in-one things like this, or single replacement consoles like the Retron 77. The whole premise that they serve some sort of need, I think, is a little inaccurate, because the need's already met. The RetroPie is out there. PC emulation's out there. There is nothing any of these boxes are going to do that isn't already available for much cheaper and much better. The only way that they win a place on the shelf, as far as I'm concerned, is if they are really cool novelty. If it is something, hey, that's neat. I like how these guys let you play these games. And yeah, I'll buy them based on that. But, I don't think there's a justifiable purpose for any of them.
okay, look, here it is. So it was called the Retro Blocks.
That's the one.
Yeah.
It debuted last year as the Retro Blocks. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they're at E3 with a small booth. And this year they say they're going down the crowdfunding route. They're not going down the crowdfunding route, and instead they raised $500,000 from angel investors. So, I mean, hey, at least they're not out there begging for money with some, they only begged maybe a few angel investors instead of the general public. So if they screw over some rich guys, I don't feel as bad as scamming tens of thousands of people.
For $12 each.
For a magnetic spoon.
Yeah.
Dude, ain't gonna buy this shit? Yeah. Trust me, magnetic spoons, no problem. Look, they had a laser razor out there. People went for that. They'll go for this, trust me.
Yeah,
the laser razor.
Hey, man,
yeah. Okay.
making spoons is almost as hard as building a submarine. So that's why it's 2 years delayed. There you go.
No,
but
building a submarine is very simple. Building a submarine that resurfaces, that's the rub.
Yeah.
But anyway, this Polymega.
Does it go up
like,
and down? Well, it goes down like a motherfucker. We've not mastered the up yet.
Dive, no problem. Surface, yeah, about that, boss. Projected completion 2022.
This Brian Bernal guy that's sort of the co-founder of it. They're trying to gear up for a larger round. They're looking for another $2 to $3 million for licensing additional games, which that makes sense. He said they're in preliminary talks are underway with Sega, Konami, Capcom. I mean, honestly, you kind of have to be, right? I mean, you would think that any of those third-party publishers or developers at this point, like, Capcom seems to be willing to put their stuff on most anything. Same with Sega. I'm sure Konami could use some additional money at this point. Hey, if somebody wants to pay him to throw some money on a system, $250 is what the console is now set at, and the different modules or whatever are going to set you back $60. So
for a lot of them,
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those premium things. It's never going to be a mass appeal system. It's not going to overnight. People aren't going to be chucking their old Nintendos into dumpsters and rushing out to buy this thing. I mean, it'll serve a purpose for a specific market. I mean, I think it looks nice. It could be convenient. To me, you still need somewhere to store these other pieces. Like, do they lock together or something? Do I have to throw them in a shoebox under my bed? Like, where do I put these extra pieces?
In a shoebox under your bed. See, the problem, I can see how some of the modules could cost $60. Well, they're going to make money on those, but you can pick up an NES for less than $60. You can pick up a SNES for less than $60. Some of the other consoles, maybe, some of the Japanese stuff, the PC engines, things like that, could maybe cost you more than $60, but I don't know. You'd still be better off buying the console, I think, because, like you say, the ones that you're not currently using, you've got to store somewhere anyway.
Now, granted, you'll have less cables and controllers and things you have to deal with if you like their controller, which looks pretty nice. It does cut down on some of the junk, but here I'm looking at, here's a brand new, well, not brand new, but here's a pre-owned Master System on eBay right now. I mean, it comes with the gun, a bunch of controllers, a stack of games, the friggin' glasses. I mean, a whole bunch of accessories, all the hookups. $150 or best offer, $20 shipping. So if there was maybe only 2 or 3 systems you wanted, you could probably buy them cheaper.
Yeah, their controller. If you're going to go out and buy this and buy, let's say, the SNES module, you're going to use your SNES controllers. You're that kind of person. The place that their controllers and third-party stuff fall over is the D-pad, because most of them are shit. When you get to a game that needs some pretty frantic movement with a D-pad, that's where a lot of them just fall over.
But again, this goes back, I think, to what I was saying. If you want to just play those games and have a convenient way to play them, a Raspberry Pi with a iBuffalo controller plugged into it does all that and more. No need to go down these roads of all this hardware. I just think if they're cool to own, they're cool to own. I think that's the only real value in having these things.
Well, I mean, you're emulating something which is sort of legally gray in many cases, versus playing it on the actual cartridge on the system.
And the result's different how?
Are they definitely playing the cartridge? Because, you use your cartridge in the Retron, and that's emulation.
Yeah. You stick the cartridge or the card or it has a CD reader on it, on the top of the whatever that. But
is the module running like a SNES core, if you like, or is it running a SNES emulator? Which is what the Retron does. You put your cartridge in that, and it reads the ROM off the cartridge and then emulates
imports
it.
the ROM and then plays an emulator.
Yeah.
I don't see anything here on the coverage, really kind of explaining the details on how it's running the system, but could be. Regardless, it seems much more thought out than some of these other systems that we've seen the past few years.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. There's no... I don't think... This does not spell scam. There's no funny math afoot. There's no odd claims. It's certainly achievable. And if it's cool enough that it is worth buying, even though it doesn't do anything you can't already do,
Here we go. So it uses hybrid emulation. with the modules, so the games can then be downloaded directly to a library, eliminating the need for physical copies of cartridges or CD-ROMs after you put them in once, kind of thing. I'm sure there's probably some way of just loading it directly to your library on the system.
Of course, if there is, if you can plug in the cart and it imports the ROM and saves it, all you gotta do is hopefully they made it easy enough that they just put it on the the SD card, so you just go ahead and copy that thing in there and go.
So coming soon.
Coming soon.
And
I guess that would be our. Go ahead.
So this was another story that I sent in. Just a little light on news. Kind of happens in the summertime. So, hey, if you're listening to this, for next month, for July, send us in some news, or if there's a topic you want us to discuss, be happy to cover it, especially on these late news months. For some reason, it seems like February every year we can't even get through everything. It's just so many stories. But, yeah. Feast or famine, I guess that's what it is with the news with this stuff. This story from Shane McClown on Hot Hardware said that Sony is now pondering the release of a retro PS1 console for classic gaming fans. I guess PlayStation is, kicking around the idea, and they are heavily considering putting one of these into their pipeline. Okay, who doesn't like making money, right?
Yeah.
It's a nice side project, easily achieved,
These are still easily available in their original form. The problem with the original form factor, the square kind of PS1, is the lasers were pretty much shit and have all been abused over the years, and most of them won't read a game properly. I'm not so sure about the newer PS1. It was, the rounded one, the much smaller one. I'm not sure how much better the lasers were in them. I've never owned one of those smaller ones. I've still got my original launch Sony PlayStation 1. I think I might still have the box for it somewhere as well. And that
I took mine apart and ran fishing wire through the inside of it and then closed it back up, and I had it suspended upside down over top of my TV because it was the only way it would play anything.
Yeah, mine would only load certain games upside down as well. But I've got a PS2 that will play them just fine. Although the lasers in those were pretty shit as well, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, hey, these things are hot right now. I know Nintendo said that they are putting the NES Classic back out. Pretty good quantity, so that hopefully they won't be failing neighborhoods this holiday.
I haven't seen one on the shelf, but whatever.
It seems like you can still find those Super NES Classics. Like those are kind of around. These things are pretty popular, and if the price is right, sub $100 comes with a controller or two, people will buy it. What games would you guys want to see on a PS1 reboot from Sony?
All the ones I like, I've pretty much got. I still have them downstairs. So I'm not in the market for one, but the classics would be the Tomb Raiders, the Colin McRae's, the Gran Turismos. I know Spyro was popular. Crash Bandicoot is always good. I know my eldest daughter just bought last year, I think, Crash Bandicoot for PS3, which I think you get the first 3 games, and that's an excellent package. Those are some great games.
I don't think it would be complete if they didn't have Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer, yeah, there was some good arcade ports on there. What was the other one people went nuts for? Final Fantasy VII. A lot of people big fans of that.
I actually got the PS1 at launch. I had anticipated it for a while and saved up and sold my Super NES collection and everything to kind of fund it. And I had that horrible fighting game, Battle of Arena Toshinden. Do you remember that?
I remember the name. I've never played it, I don't think.
I mean, it was just god-awful, like early polygonal 3D fighter. It was such shit, but, you know, at the time it was just like, oh my god, this game is so incredible. And it's almost
Fighter when it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically unplayable. It's so bad. I would hope that they wouldn't put any of that, you know, kind of schlock on it. Those early tech demos, essentially.
There was a couple of Star Wars games on it that I played. Dark Forces, which was also a PC game, which was an FPS. And there was a fighter on it as well that I played a little bit. It was all right, but a lot of people slated it, and that was Masters of Terrakazi. And you could play all the different Star Wars characters. It was a beat-em-up, essentially.
You know,
Love
I
this
honestly just skipped that whole generation. There was nothing about, like, when the PlayStation was coming out, I remember thinking, like, Sony video game, whatever. And I don't know, man. I just never, the whole original PlayStation, Xbox, that whole generation of consoles, pretty much anything after the SNES and Genesis, for a very long time, just didn't hold any interest to me at all, and still don't. I go back and look at PS1. For me, there's nothing really there. The games were, you know, too ambitious for, you know, their era, and I don't know.
You've got some
didn't
that
like them then, don't like them now.
You've got some that were ambitious but really did work. Metal Gear Solid, of course, springs to mind. Heart of Darkness was a wonderful platformer. I love that.
Castlevania Symphony of Night, brilliant.
One of the most valuable games on the system. And what was the one I just had on the tip of my tongue then?
Legacy of Kain?
No, it was
Final Fantasy
What
7?
were you just talking about? Metal Gear Solid, Heart of
Chrono Cross?
Darkness. Oh, fuck. What was it? It was amazing, and it's completely gone.
Resident Evil?
Well, yeah, I would include Resident Evil, the first Silent Hill, Dino Crisis, which was essentially Resident Evil 1 with dinosaurs, but great game.
Oddworld?
That's the ones I was thinking of. Yeah, the two Oddworld games, Abe's Exodus and Abe's Odyssey. Amazing games, really, really good. But I've still got them from when I had the PS1, which, you know, was a few years ago, but not all that long ago, really.
Well, those were more like flashback the way they played than anything else. You know, it's like it's kind of funny, like the Abe's games and the Castlevania Symphony of Night, like those were not polygon games. I don't think the hardware was there yet to really support that. Even Resident Evil, you know, you sort of had that 3/4 view and sort of static backgrounds and stuff. It just didn't have enough horsepower to push what they were trying to do back then.
And that's what I've complained about forever on this is it was polygons before polygons were ready for mainstream. And it was just a train wreck of a generation.
I wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't either. I mean, the Ridge Racer games were good. Wipeout was fun. Yeah, there was some decent games on that system.
Definitely.
Not nearly the kind of classics that you'd see from generations before or maybe even afterwards. It was sort of an odd time where the capabilities of the hardware weren't quite there yet.
That's my point.
Which brings us to the end of live news for June. As mentioned, we are light on stories during the summer months, but at least we didn't do it during what do we usually end up doing it on? Memorial Day weekend when no fuckers home. So, thanks for listening, and send us your news stories for next month. As Sparkle said, anything you want us to touch on, talk about, discuss, share your opinions.
And we always try and do our best to mention the people who have sent in duplicate stories. Never let that dissuade you. If we don't give it a mention, it's because sometimes there's, three of us in there clearing out the ones we've already read. And sometimes we clear out ones that we've already read. But we do appreciate it. And if you ever think, someone else has probably sent that one in, they probably haven't.
They probably haven't. And we should just mention that scheduling issues have meant that there's no Random Dave this month for live news. He's away a-travelling. I think he's gone down to see his folks. So
before that, he was in Scotland.
he was. So Random should return next month, and we shall try and announce news with some more notice. And we'll see you for it. So thank you for listening in. Bye-bye, everybody.
Right on.